Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, before we hop in the video, I want to thank the fantastic sponsor of the channel, SKJ Tax. December is here. That means tax season is set to kick off, and it's time to draft an all-pro CPA to create your tax savings playbook. The IRS has instant replay, and when they throw the challenge flag, they charge penalties, fines, and interest that'll put you behind the sticks. Don't let the IRS sack your bank account. Hire JR the Tax Czar to drive yourself or your business down the field for a tax savings touchdown. The best part about SKJ Tax is JR is a Jet fan and he supports the channel. So if you want to support the channel, you want to help yourself out during tax season, head over to JR and SKJ Tax, linked in the description below. Let's hop into our topic of today. A few topics. I want to recap a few different things, but let's hop into the topic that we're going to talk about first. And that is Joe Flacco. We're going against him and the Cleveland Browns tonight in Cleveland. And he wanted to play for the New York Jets when Aaron Rodgers initially got hurt. And there's fans sort of sitting back saying, wow, Joe Flacco is looking pretty decent over there in Cleveland. Could he have been our starter, and could we have been in the position that Cleveland's currently in if he was here in New York versus, you know, maybe a Zack Wilson or Trevor Siemian or whoever else you wanted to see start for the New York Jets. So let's listen to a clip of what Robert Saleh said about Joe Flacco just last August 2022, and then we'll get into his comments more recently about the star quarterback.
He should be, in my opinion, he could start in this league. I believe that. He's, sometimes this league has a tendency to pigeonhole people or put labels on people, and then their opportunities kind of get limited. But Joe Flacco is a starting quarterback in this league. He's really, really talented.
So Robert Saleh had some really glowing things to say about Joe Flacco just last year. Now let's flip forward to this year and hear about, are there any regrets that you didn't bring in Joe Flacco this year as the quarterback once Aaron Rodgers went down?
Like we said, we love Joe first and foremost. Obviously, he spent a couple of years with him. Love him. Love the way he prepares. Really pumped for him and the success he's having. But it's just a decision we made in terms of the quarterback room and the way we developed it over the course of OTAs and training camp. And it was just a decision we made.
Was he in the conversation at all when you were pivoting from Aaron between you and Joe?
Yeah, there's always going to be discussions. There was a bunch of guys that we talked about.
I mean, was he specifically part of that conversation, or was that just not a fit in your guys' eyes?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to speak for Joe D on this one, but yeah, Joe Flacco has a soft spot with all of us.
Robert, obviously it's hindsight, but when you look at the way Joe has performed and obviously come off the couch, so to speak, is there any regret that maybe you didn't take a closer look at that, and because the fact that he's been in here and knows this place, even though it's not PAC system? No,
never regret, because like I said, you always go into things with what you hope being a sound decision. The biggest thing is to reflect upon those decisions and to see what we could have done better as a coaching staff, as an organization. But every decision we make feel like it comes with deep thought and logic, and but no, there's no regret there.
When you're watching him slinging around like that, it's kind of difficult to wonder what if, I suppose.
No, I don't think I ever let myself go there, but it is pumped to just watch him. I am pumped to watch him play. It is fun for any guy that you've gotten an opportunity to coach and be around to have success, and he's definitely having it right now.
So this is an interesting conversation that I think is at least worth exploring. Would Joe Flacco have righted the ship for the New York Jets? Could we have wound up in the playoffs because of his play versus the play we got out of the quarterback position? Right now, through 4 games, Joe Flacco has 1,307 yards and 10 touchdowns. He does have 7 interceptions, so not a clean slate by any means, but 10 touchdowns is pretty nice compared to what our offense has been able to put up. Given that was only 4 weeks, and we are now 17 weeks, or going to be 17 weeks into the NFL season. It's frustrating. And look, I don't think that Joe Flacco winds up being the same quarterback with us as he would have been with Cleveland. Look, and you can look at Cleveland. You can say, look, they lost their starting left tackle. They lost their starting right tackle. They lost their best weapon in Chubb, or arguably their best weapon in Chubb. and they're able to find wins, and they're able to get success out of that position, and they're able to continue moving forward. But then you look at like the pressure stats. Zack Wilson, just against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago, was pressured on like, I think it was 80% of his dropbacks, where Joe Flacco, by comparison, over the last 4 weeks, has been pressured the 4th least of quarterbacks in the NFL over that span of time. So Joe Flacco behind our offensive line is not going to look like Joe Flacco behind the Browns' offensive line. I mean, look, there's definitely some vibe or some feelings maybe from fans that look at this and say, wow, Garrett Wilson has the same exact amount of touchdowns from Zack Wilson in 20 games as Garrett Wilson has from Joe Flacco in the time that he's been here. 2 per quarterback. Like, not a fun thing. It's super frustrating. But look, I should Flacco have been part of the discussion in September when Rodgers went down? Sure. I think you should overturn, every stone, make sure you have done your due diligence. Based on what I saw from Flacco last year, I did not want to see Flacco behind our offensive line. The line was continually an issue. I think Zach, unfortunately, wound up being our best option. I mean, maybe you can, say, well, Carson Wentz could have been a potential option because he is mobile and he was once an MVP caliber type quarterback, but he's been bounced around from team to team over the last 4 years too. So I'm not sure there was a right answer there. It's frustrating, but I'm not so sure there's a different way you could have gone at the emergency point in the season right there, given the other options that have kind of either fizzled out or like the other ugly things that have reared their heads. Like, I don't know if you overcome Hackett's play calling ability. I don't know if you overcome wide receiver drops. I don't know if you overcome poor offensive line play. I don't know. We're more than just a quarterback away at this particular time. The next topic that I want to talk about. Mr. Aaron Rodgers. He clarifies a rumor that was said in regards to the IR and all the stuff like, hey, why are you bumping someone off? Nick Bawden got cut from the roster, and then he goes on Pat McAfee and he says like, hey, look, that's not the case. That's not how it happened. So let's listen to what actually happened from the quarterback's mouth, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Well, I figured there'd be some conversation about it. The story is simple. We lost to the previous week, and I was, again, targeting the 24th to come back. So I assumed I was going to go on IR. I asked to be put on IR because, there was a conversation, do you want to practice? And I said, not at the expense of somebody getting cut. I know how this works, and I didn't need to feel like I needed to practice to continue my rehab. I could do on-the-field stuff on the side. But obviously I got overruled there. It is what it is. And, yeah, that was an interesting situation. I called Nick right away. I just said, hey, I just hope you know this isn't coming from me. I asked him to put me on IR. But he actually said, hey, look, I'm vested. I'm getting my money. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. He would have got elevated this last week if he'd been healthy, but he'll be back up this week, I'm sure.
So the media spin in Aaron Rodgers is a bad dude for making someone else get booted off the roster because he's not planning on playing, but he wants to be on the active roster, maybe for, optics of I returned from this Achilles injury and whatnot. And that's definitely where I think I felt it probably came from to some degree. Like, Rodgers has always kind of come off a little selfish and, he probably wants the clout of, hey, I came back. I'm on the active roster. Now, him coming out and saying, look, that's not the case. Like, I've been in the league a long time. I understand what goes on. Like, I'm being fed. It's okay. I could do my rehab elsewhere. That does feel like it makes a lot of sense. And the Jets making like a weird, clunky decision because of it is not surprising to me. Like, it doesn't shock me that Woody Johnson or Joe Douglas or Robert Saleh decided to activate Aaron Rodgers. Also in part because like they're selling tickets. Or is there more additional practice time or something? Like, I think the presence of Aaron Rodgers being around the team is important enough, and probably more important than maybe like not necessarily, the 53rd guy on the roster, but more important than maybe like a practice squad guy. And I don't know the particular rules as far as how much time he's allowed to spend with the team if he is on IR, because maybe they decided Rodgers being here in as much capacity as possible is just more valuable than the guy we're going to wind up bouncing off the practice squad, because Nick Bawden is a vested vet. He's not losing any money. He was guaranteed his salary as soon as week 1 hit, and he's ultimately back on the roster anyway. He's just injured. So I'm not so concerned about this move. I guess I question it a little bit from like a Jets leadership perspective. Like, are we really like super confident in our coaching staff that we like have to feel like we need to have Rodgers around here the whole time? Or is he more of like a crutch to help you get across the end of this sort of season finish line and keep the locker room together? I don't know. I'm not super bent out of shape about it one way or the other. I don't think Nick Bawden honestly should be on the roster. Anyway, we don't use him more than we should. We don't use him enough to justify his roster spot to begin with. So him getting cut for Aaron Rodgers was not something that I saw as a very big deal here. But I understand where people are getting all bent out of shape. The next topic I want to talk about is little Zack Wilson news. Obviously not starting against the Cleveland Browns tonight. He's been ruled out for this game because of his concussion that he sustained in the Miami game 2 weeks ago. Obviously did not play against the Commanders, and then on the short week was not able to play for the Jets against the Browns. So the question comes up, is this the last time we see Zack Wilson in a Jets uniform, or will we see him again maybe potentially in Week 18 against the Patriots? Maybe he can exercise the demons against the Patriots. For me, when I'm looking at this, I would prefer to bring Zack back as quarterback 3 to compete against someone we bring in as quarterback 2, and hopefully Zack beats out the quarterback 2, and you feel a little bit better going into next season with a guy who's been in the offense already. That's sort of where I fall in the Zack Wilson stuff. But when I see the concussion and you start to piece together some little breadcrumbs like, oh, he's reluctant to play behind the offensive line, and the offensive line is getting people peppered with either sacks or injuries or all the different things that he's been hit over the course of the year. I think there's probably some degree of like kid gloves that they're putting on. Like if you're going back and you're saying like, well, hey, what was the last thing we saw from him? And if you're trying to make a trade, you're saying, well, wow, the Houston game was really good. Zack had a great game, but then he got blasted by his offensive line the very next week, and he got hit, concussed. And then I think you can lean on that and say like, well, the last part of the season didn't work out the way we thought it was going to. Clearly, it was launching off to a great point after the Houston game. We could get a higher trade value because of, it was an injury and our commitment to Rodgers as to why Zack was maybe bounced around a little bit. I hope it's not the last time we see Zack, but I have a very hard time seeing them playing him in Week 18 at this particular point in time. I would, and honestly, if I'm looking at the Jets-Patriots game, I would love to see Zack exercise his demons against the Patriots and stay on the Jets. Like, I don't really want to see him play and then like get destroyed by the Patriots and then have this whole like offseason narrative and, hurts our trade value. But I also don't want to see him like play and do terribly. So I don't really know where I'm at on this. Look, whatever gets us the best value and helps us win the most next year is what I want. If that's Zack as quarterback 2, great. If it's a draft pick for Zack because we just have to break ties, fine. That's great too. I'm not going to die on either hill on this one. But interesting stuff. I don't think we see Zack play again, at least this season. The next topic I want to talk about, Robert Saleh discussing tanking and the coaching changes that could or should be made in the offseason. Robert Saleh addresses the tanking question.
What do you say to the fan who looks at games now that you're not going to the playoffs and says they'd be better off losing, right? Get better draft position. What do you get out of these wins right now that it's not going for the playoffs?
It's a good question, Kaz, because you as a fan, I get it, but I would challenge the fan to walk into the locker room and look at all those men who strap up every day and cross the white and put in all this work. We're all competitive, and no one wants to step on the field and put together a poor effort and look bad on tape. That's their resume. That's who they are. That's who we are. Our game plans, our performance on the field as players, and there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of sacrifice that all these men who play football have sacrificed their entire lives, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the family time, the vacations, to put themselves in position to call themselves professional athletes. And while I get it from the fan perspective, you will never see a player ever think about anything other than stepping on the field, being his absolute best, and trying to figure out how to win a football game. Same with coaches.
This is exactly the response I do want to hear from Robert Saleh. Like, obviously acknowledging the fan base and the frustration that we have, because there is a very different lens that you look through as a fan versus a coach and a player. As a fan, I'm a Jet fan for life, unfortunately. I'm just kind of stuck there. I'm not leaving. But Robert Saleh, the players, this is their resume, this is their body of work, this is how they get paid, this is their career. They cannot just go out and openly tank. So no fan is actively asking coaches to tank or asking players to put on a poor effort. We want to see consistency. And consistently over the course of the season, we have gotten poor effort. But then as soon as the season is over, after you get shut out by a division rival, a game you needed to stay in the playoffs, or at least the playoff hunt, you get your doors kicked in the second half of a game against the worst team in the NFL, who traded away two of their best players on the defensive line, has the 32nd ranked defense, and you have to win in like a last-second field goal of 55 yards because they're playing prevent defense, and like it wasn't a good way to win. Like, I understand like where he's coming from. And look, I'm never going to go into a stadium or go into a locker room and say, hey, Breece Hall, hey, Garrett Wilson, you guys need to put in a poor effort and lose this game. No, as a fan, I want to see you put in the same effort you put into that game, into every game. Don't come out flat against the Dolphins. Don't come out and like, and you know, I don't necessarily put this all on the players. I put a lot of this on the coaching. The coaching consistently, when the Jets are in like their backs are against the wall, consistently with Robert Saleh, 83 points against, 15 points for in the 3 games where we were facing elimination from the playoffs the last 3 years. And it's really frustrating as a fan because there's just situations that like we're just not lucky enough to accidentally get the top pick. Like everyone says, oh, well, tanking has never worked for the New York Jets. It's because we haven't completed the tank is the most frustrating part. You don't complete the tank. You wind up winning a meaningless game against the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2007. Winds up getting Matt Ryan to go in front of you, and we wind up taking Vernon Gholston. Then in 2019, you wind up winning a game at the end. You don't get Nick Bosa like the 49ers, who apparently tanked and lost their quarterback for the season. It was a golden opportunity. You wind up with Quinnen Williams. And I love Quinnen. I got no issue with Quinnen. But Leo and Bosa plus, everything else is probably a little bit better. And then you got the whole Trevor Lawrence, Zach thing. It's not a surefire thing. I get it as a fan. But, like, we got a lot of baggage as fans for the last 50 years. So as much as you might be, like, irritated that fans might, be actively rooting for a tank, the best way to do that or to prevent that from happening is to win games. Win games, and this is not a discussion. No fan is going to actively root for losses and draft picks when you are winning football games. So win football games, not a problem. As far as changes to the coaching staff for next year, they've already been told everyone's safe, or at least the major players are safe. So that's Hackett, that's Saleh, that's Douglas. No one's leaving. But I would think you have to make some changes across the board. Offensive line-wise, plenty of teams have offensive line issues. The Jets seem to consistently have the worst ones. So offensive line coach, passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach, those 3, yank them out, get them out of here. I don't think we can do worse than what we currently are right now. Like, for me, you got to have some type of blood. Someone's got to fall on the sword, and I don't particularly want it to be Zach. I really think the coaching staff kind of screwed us on a little bit more here. And Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas definitely did not set us up for success from an offensive line perspective. We didn't do enough to get what we needed to do. So we'll have to see if we can address that in the offseason with all the free agent money, all the draft picks. But man, it's brutal. And I get where fans are frustrated. I get where the coaching staff and the players are probably frustrated with the fans about the tanking thing. But I don't know. I guess I can't tell someone how to be a fan, but I can tell someone like, hey, you got to understand like where we're coming from on a lot of this. This is frustrating. Like, are you going to be able to figure out the tackle position in the offseason? Because there's not a lot of good offensive linemen in free agency. And in the draft, you kind of played yourself out of the top 2. I mean, I guess as long as you take the right player, it's all water under the bridge. You can find talent in every round. You just need to have a GM that can do it. It just so happens that our GM can't figure out the offensive line. Becton instead of Wirfs. You got friggin', I don't know. There's just a lot of flub-ups across the board here. And I just want the offensive line fixed. I want it solved. I don't want to have to think about this for another season. The final topic that I want to go over today is Zack Wilson and the idea of him possibly getting traded. We heard yesterday that Russell Wilson is being benched for the final 2 games of the season because he is due a $37 million guarantee in March for the 2025 season. So what the, not Giants and not the Jets, what the Broncos are doing right now is protecting themselves by benching Russell Wilson. They are going to be able to bench him. No one's going to trade for the contract that he is currently on, so they are going to eat a massive dead cap hit. They are going to designate him, I believe, a June 1st cut. They'll have to eat like $40 million in cap space. That puts them about $18 million under or over, I guess, the salary cap for next year. And they do have contracts that they can shed. But what this tells me with Russell Wilson and with the Broncos is that they clearly do not want to move forward with him, and they have to kind of hit the reset button. So if you're going to let Russell Wilson walk and you're not going to have enough money to bring in free agents to address the rest of the other team, this opens the door for a potential trade. And the reason why I bring up Zack Wilson's name is because of comments that Sean Payton made last year about our quarterback. And he was on Fox, and he says, do you think, or he was asked, do you think eventually Zack could earn that job back? And he says, absolutely, I think he can. But not. He's not going to be able to do it today or tomorrow. It's going to be a series of days, brick by brick, working on being the best teammate, but also working on the skill set, because ultimately it's a production position. Ultimately, the respect of your players, the respect of your peers and your teammates, that's going to come when they've seen and you've seen you can do it on a regular basis. So not a concrete endorsement of Zack Wilson, but I think it's clear that Sean Payton has some degree of confidence in the skill set that Zack Wilson has. Now, a lot of stuff has changed over the last year. You had all the drama between Nathaniel Hackett and Sean Payton. You know, does Zack want to potentially play for Sean Payton? I think he would want to, given the confidence that he seems to have displayed anyway. And then, you know, what happened, you know, the scouting report going into the Jets-Broncos game this past year, was there enough there that Payton saw that he wanted to actually move forward with a potential trade? But I could see a situation where the Broncos said, hey, look, we can't bring in a high drafted player. We're not going to have a high enough draft pick to go get a quarterback this year. Let's go out and take a swing of all swings. Let's give a mid to late round pick to the New York Jets. Get Zack Wilson in here. He's going to cost us 1 year, $4 million is what his contract is if he's traded. Best part, if he booms, you're in great position. You don't have to spend a draft pick on a quarterback because you have proven it. Sean Payton, you have shown that Nathaniel Hackett cannot coach a quarterback, and you have shown that, I mean, obviously you got more out of Russell Wilson this past year. If you could get more out of Zack Wilson, you turn him around, you're going to look like a damn genius. Or Zack Wilson implodes, looks like how he's kind of played over here with the New York Jets, and then you bottom out and you get a top pick in 2025, and you eat all the salary cap implications of the Russell Wilson dead cap hit in a year that you're kind of rebuilding anyway. That's why Sean Payton got the long contract. It's going to be an interesting scenario. And from my perspective, I still don't really want to trade Zack. Unless you're telling me that we're getting like a 4th or better for Zack Wilson, if we're going to get like a 5th, a 6th, a 7th round pick for Zack, I think he makes more sense as a backup quarterback for us because he already knows our system. And Aaron Rodgers is here, and I'd rather us be the beneficiary of like some miraculous turnaround than, you know, bringing in another backup quarterback who we're still going to wind up having to pay, because the Jets are going to pay $5 million for Zack's contract regardless of whether he's here or not. I don't know. A lot of it's probably going to hinge on Zack and how much he actually wants to be here versus how much the coaching staff actually wants him to be here. Is that relationship too far gone? Is the relationship still something that could be mended? I don't know. I think the last Week 18 portion of this schedule, does Zack play if he's cleared from concussion protocol, or do they keep him on the bench, may tell us a lot about where this is potentially heading in the offseason. So I guess I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about all these comments down below in the comment section? Do you think that Zack gets traded? Do you think he should be the backup? Do you think Robert Saleh is correct about tanking? Do you think, I don't know. Let me know what you think down below. Joe Flacco, should he have been our quarterback this year? Let me know in the comments section down below. And as always, go Jets. Jets!